all righty.
We call this a City Council regular meeting of March 11th, 2025 to order. Welcome to everyone, those of you who are in attendance and those of you who are joining us online. For those who wish to speak during the public comment periods, if you would, there's a sign-up sheet in the back for agenda items and for non-agenda items. We got everybody? Okay, great. All righty, with that, if you would please stand and for the invocation and pledge of allegiance by Mayor Pro Tem Mike McPhee.
It's your custom to bow. Please join us in prayer. Father God, you give us grace at every turn in our lives. As you guide the works of our community, help us to recognize and give us energy and wisdom to provide what is needed. Let us be true stewards of the earth and strengthen our resolve to protect her and our community. Guide the decisions and thoughtfulness of our meeting. In your holy name we pray. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next is public comment. These are for agenda items. We have one person, Daniel Blackman. Dan, please give us your full name and address for the record.
Mayor and councilors, for the record, my name is Daniel Blackman. I live at 1010 Duke Street, which is in the northwest quadrant of Beaufort. I'm also the president of the Northwest Quadrant Neighborhood Association, and in the capacity, I'm speaking for many people there who do not use their voice for one reason or another. The problem with the waterfront park. What is the problem with the waterfront park? It's foundation, isn't it? There's a problem with the foundation. And we all agree on that. Those of us in the historic district especially the northwest quadrant that I'm most familiar with, know that if you walk the streets of northwest quadrant, you'll see a different foundation problem. And you all know what it is. It's the homes. The homes that were built in the 1860s, the 1880s, even newer than that, have problems with their foundations. I was happy when I saw that we were having a contract proposed, an MOU with the Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust. I have trouble getting that out. I was very happy with seeing that I call it a contract, MOU. Until I got to the page that had the ineligible items. And I start reading down the ineligible items and I see foundations. Why in the world are we making foundations ineligible? It forecloses using money for foundations. I'm not sure we want to do that. What we might want to do, depending on the situation, is leave the door open for foundation repairs if it's within a certain amount of money, if it's feasible for the house, if it's eligible for state funding through the South Carolina Housing Trust, because I'm told that the South Carolina Housing Trust will not allow foundation expenditures, which is kind of inconceivable to me, but if that's their rule, maybe we should do something else. Like maybe the mayor and council should send a letter to the South Carolina Housing Trust explaining the rationale behind having foundations under house. We also should send that letter to the governor and the state delegation so that the rules allow foundation funding by the South Carolina Housing Trust. I have 4 proposals. You've heard all 3. Amend the exclusionary language on page 167 of the MOU, where it's approximately there. That's the way it appeared on my computer, but it may be off a page or 2 as I was just checking before the meeting. But it's the ineligible list. We don't want to shut the door on repairing foundations. We could say it's eligible if allowed by the South Carolina Housing Trust. That would be a more acceptable way to do it. I have, for the benefit of both the staff and for the mayor and council, a little memorandum of the 4 points. The final point I'll have to hold for the public hearing, because the final point is we should apply for community block grants for foundations. Let me leave you with this thought. I was thinking about foundations and I saw my grandchildren playing, and they were playing with Legos. And you've probably played with Legos, or maybe you've played with Lincoln logs, or maybe you've played with blocks. But early in your childhood, you learned you can't build much of a tower unless you have a solid foundation. Just think about that. And we're limiting ourselves so that we can't spend this money on foundations. Makes no sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blackman. Okay, anybody else would like to speak on an agenda item? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move forward. All right, a meeting agenda approval. Do I have a motion to accept?
Motion to accept.
Again, a second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next are presentations, recognition of Police Officer Dan Thompson for his Governor's Silver Crest Award. And this is in recognition of his 25 years of unpaid volunteer service as a reserve officer.
The Order of the Silver Crescent is South Carolina's highest honor for volunteerism and community service, issued by the governor to individuals who have demonstrated exceptional commitment, leadership, and dedication to their communities. This prestigious award recognizes those who embody the spirit of selfless service, going above and beyond in their contributions to the betterment of the state and its citizens. Tonight, we recognize Officer Dan Thompson as a deserving recipient of this distinguished award. With 25 years and thousands of volunteer hours as a reserve officer, his service to the Beaufort Police Department and to the city of Beaufort has been nothing short of extraordinary. His commitment, often stepping in on nights, weekends, and during critical staffing shortages, all while serving in a reserve capacity, unpaid, is a testament to his unwavering dedication to public safety and his community. Officer Thompson's career as a reserve officer has lasted longer than many full-time officers, and his positive attitude, mentorship, and steadfast commitment to service have left an indelible mark on this department and the people of Beaufort. Speech.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, council, attendees. Thank you so much for coming tonight to our city council meeting. And I certainly appreciate the standing ovation for the outstanding service of Officer Dan Thompson. He is an incredible individual, and I can tell you this from backing him up on calls. He is an active individual. And many times when people didn't even want to be the police, he not only wanted to be the police, he wanted to be the unpaid police to protect your community, to protect our community. And I am so proud of him and his family. Thank you so much.
And, excuse me, next we have a presentation of a House and a Senate resolution and Beaufort County proclamation for Lafayette Month in celebration of the bicentennial of the Marquis de Lafayette's 1825 visit to Beaufort. If you'll bring forward those proclamations, and I'll bring the one from the county, and with council and the city manager and assistant city manager join us in front of the dais. Council.
Breathe in as much as you can. All right, 1, 2, 3.
Hey, Lisa, all yours.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Lisa Sunderlow with Historic Beaufort Foundation, but also representing the Lafayette Bicentennial Committee tonight. We have just had an amazing past 8 months of planning and preparing for what is already kicked off with regard to our Lafayette celebration in Beaufort during the month of March. And hopefully you were all able to see the wonderful Lafayette history banners that we had in City Hall for all of last week. They're at the Beaufort History Museum right now. And then next week, they'll be back at the John Mark Vidier House for a permanent display. I would like to extend today an invitation to all of council. And I realize that puts you in a position of potentially being able to vote. So maybe y'all should sit away from each other, but all of y'all to participate as a part of our festivities on Tuesday, March 18th, where we are going to welcome the Marquis de Lafayette, just as it was done in 1825, but on a power boat rather than a steamboat, coming to the day dock at the Waterfront Park at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, and met with a 13-gun salute, a cannon fire as well, and bagpipes, which will assist with leading the Sons of American Revolution's color guard to not only welcome, but to then marshal Lafayette and a whole contingent of folks, including yourselves, to participate in our parade procession, which will go down Bay Street. And I will let you know, the Beaufort County schools have come out in full force. We may have as many as 500 students who are going to be a part of the event on Tuesday, ages, third grade up to eighth grade. And just recently, Holy Trinity contacted us, and they have 30 students who are going to portray the Beaufort Volunteer Artillery, which was a critical group, not only during the Revolutionary War and continued protection of the island of Port Royal, but definitely were a part of the welcome for Lafayette during his farewell tour. And in addition to that, we're going to have presentations and from each of our dignitaries. If you choose to speak, the Mayor Cromer will be presiding and dressed in perfect gentleman attire for that day. Are you going to wear the kilt that day?
I'm gonna wear the one I wore the other night.
Yes, with your top hat. It was absolutely perfect. Lafayette, of course, will come as Lafayette, and that's Mark Schneider, and he is the renowned Lafayette interpreter from Colonial Williamsburg. So we are delighted to have him coming to Beaufort. We're one of only probably about 10 states who were lucky to get him to be able to come to their community. And following the parade procession, we'll have the unveiling of the Lafayette marker. And then on Scott Street, living history demonstrations, which will last until 3 o'clock. And hopefully y'all all have gotten in your tickets for the evening dancing with Lafayette at the Beaufort History Museum in the Arsenal Courtyard. I think Lafayette's going to be pretty tired by that time dancing with everyone throughout the day. But we do encourage y'all and thank y'all for being a partner in this, but to also be a part that day of the events. And also want to make sure that you know that on Monday night, we have an exciting activity that is scheduled at St. Helena's Anglican Church Parish House. And it's called, it's Dr. John McCardle and Lafayette. And Dr. John McCardle will be in 1825 attire, as will be Lafayette. And Dr. McCardle will be a 19th century historian interviewing Lafayette. And I think that will be a very exciting session that night. And I hope that y'all will be able to join us for that as well. But we encourage the community to come out, be a part of it, learn history, learn about Lafayette, learn what his mission and vision was for equality, for freedom and liberty, and a young country that he wanted to be the model for equality, liberty, and freedom. Thank you so much for all of your support. We're excited to be bringing this event to fruition. Thanks.
Thank you, Lise. Appreciate it. Okay, next we have a character education proclamation. Terrence Thomas, Beaufort Middle School.
Move acceptance.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Whereas schools, school districts, and states are working to instill important core ethical and performance values, including caring, honesty, diligence, fairness, fortitude, responsibility, respect for others, for self, and for others. And whereas character education provides long-term solutions to moral, ethical, and academic issues that are of growing concern in our society and our schools. Whereas the 11 principles of effective character education include promoting core ethical and performance values, teaching students to understand, care about, and act upon those values, encompassing all aspects of the school culture, fostering a caring school community, providing opportunities for moral action, supporting academic achievement, developing intrinsic motivation, including whole staff involvement, requiring positive leadership of staff and students, and involving parents and community members in assessing the results and striving to improve upon those results. Whereas the Beaufort County School District's Character Education Program was formed to support parents' efforts in developing good character in their children, and each school's counselor identified a list of character words and definitions deemed important regardless of the person's political leanings, race, gender, or religious convictions. And those words are friendship, kindness, acceptance, courage, tolerance, respect, gratitude, compassion, citizenship, perseverance, honesty, integrity, self-control, forgiveness, responsibility, and cooperation. And whereas Terrence Thomas was selected as the winner of Beaufort Middle Schools as a Student of the Month, now therefore, the City Council of the City of Beaufort hereby proclaim January 2025 as Terrence Thomas as Beaufort Middle School Student of the Month. City of Beaufort hereby proclaims Perseverance as the word of the month for January and applauds Terrence Thomas, the Beaufort County School District, the Beaufort Middle School for their work in specifically honoring Terrence Thomas as Beaufort Middle School's Student of the Month. Congratulations.
Good evening, Mayor and council members and attendees. Thank you so much for allowing us to have the stage to recognize one of our own, Terrence Thomas. I have to say, and I will keep this as brief as I can because I recognize they're tired, we're tired. We had avid events tonight. It's been a day. But the first time I met Terrence was as an incoming sixth grader. We had just started our Avid program at Beaufort Middle School, and it didn't matter what we needed for a new student at a school. It was at orientation, and if there was a question that needed answering, he answered it. There was a task that needed doing, he was volunteering. And little did I know that that was going to be the spirit of the student that we would have in our building for the next 3 years. The next time I encountered Terrence was in my inbox. Who emails the principal? Like willingly. But he did, and it was over Christmas break. So again, who emails the principal on a break because they want to? That would be Terrence. And he was asking if South Carolina had any type of program or procedures so that he could break the world record for becoming the youngest bus driver that he could be, so that he could go ahead and make money for his future endeavors. And I'm not kidding, because I said, well, you have to go through certain processes, check this Beaufort County website. He then went on to do that, and he contacted our executive director, Dr. Cox, and again asked. So we recognized that this was a driven student. And we have put him in, and he has served as one of our mentors for our students. We've put him in contact with our BMS, our behavior management specialist, who also drives a bus for us. So he helps to do patrols and safety checks with the bus in the morning and helps to make sure that that's done under that supervision. But that's just the kind of student that is Terrence. Perseverance is one word. It's a word. It's just not enough words to describe the awesomeness that we have. And we were blessed this year to have his brother join us in sixth grade. And I will say this, I kind of taught his mama. So when you start getting students of your students, life feels a little bit different. But in this case, it's legacy. So I appreciate you all for taking the time to welcome and recognize his greatness and to pay into and fill his bucket for his future. And I appreciate that you all have this continuing program so that all students of Beaufort County get that moment in the spotlight for doing what's right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And next, we have a proclamation proclaiming March 2025 as Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Whereas more than 500,000 South Carolina residents and families are impacted by severe lifelong disabilities including autism, head injuries, spinal cord injuries, intellectual disabilities, and related disabilities. Whereas people with lifelong disabilities are productive citizens, neighbors, and family members, deserving of respect and opportunities for economic self-sufficiency, independence, and personal growth. And whereas South Carolinians with and without disabilities work together, play together, worship together, learn together, and grow together. And whereas we owe a special debt of gratitude for the caregivers who selflessly provide physical, emotional, and spiritual support to our residents with disabilities and special needs. And whereas in 2025, observance of Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month, my mouth is going, I'm sorry, celebrates a successful partnership between people with and without disabilities, as well as the increasing involvement of people in education, employment, and community activities. Now therefore, the City Council of the City of Beaufort hereby proclaim March 2025 as Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month. The City of Beaufort encourages all citizens to work together to promote increased opportunities for people with disabilities, to recognize the many contributions made by people with disabilities in our communities, and to honor the dedication of the caregivers who bring support and hope to their fellow citizens. Thank you very much.
Uh, Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman, and attendees. Thank you very much for this honor in honoring March as Disabilities Awareness Month. My name is Galen Stirrup-Camo. I am one of the members of the Advisory Committee for Beaufort County Disabilities and Special Needs. I just want to say that Beaufort County DSN is I've worked in the field through various different means, direct support. I have disabilities myself, but anyway, yeah, I know. I'm trying to come up with a word. It's not coming. You know?
I couldn't do developmental either, so don't. do
Yeah,
that, so.
I hear you. Case management, direct service, and also just, I've done that for years, but I no longer do that. I now work in this advisory role, and I've worked all across the country, and I just really want to say that you all should be exceedingly proud of Beaufort County DSN. They're one of the best organizations that I have ever seen right here in local Beaufort County. So be very proud of all the individuals that are served by the organization, for they are a part of our everyday lives. They are our neighbors. They are our employees. They may also may even be our employers at times. But it's an absolutely beautiful organization with a lot of passion and a lot of wonderful people working and being served by it. So thank you very much for this honor. Have a wonderful evening, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Galen. Okay, next we have a consent agenda. Do I have a motion to accept?
Motion to accept.
Second.
Okay, any discussion, clarification?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I could start with Raul. I was just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on some of the conflicts that have arisen on the Duke Street project, and then maybe talk us through what that looks like, timeframe wise, or overcoming those.
Mr. Mayor, Council, the issues that we're currently experiencing on Duke Street have to deal with the South Carolina Department of Transportation. And it's a line of sight issue as it pertains to the parking on the street. So currently, the engineer and us are working on those line of sight issues and trying to see how we can minimize that in order to go forward from that stage of the project. The other issues are the utility conflicts. Although the lines are above ground, we do have water, sewer, gas. And when we start to do some of the stormwater work, those are the things that we still continue to work through for location, movement, whatever needs to be done in order for us to proceed with that portion of the project. So that's kind of where we're at. And it's a back and forth with the DOT. They ask questions, we answer. They ask more questions, we answer. So that's
And then-
kind of where we're at.
That, once that is behind us, then we can start applying for permits and moving
Correct.
forward. Okay.
When we get past the DOT comments, now we can start with the permit process. And then once that process is completed with the permits, that's when we usually come and we go to the RFP bidding and contract stage.
Understood. And then the second question would be, what is the next step to better understand when we'll be awarded the National Park Service Land and Water Conservation funds that we were told about prior? I know that's been a couple months back, but I just didn't know if we had identified a path forward on when we might receive those funds for the waterfront fascia repair.
Jay just had a little more information on that front than I have, so.
Good evening, council. We're working with the National Park Service as part of the waterfront park evaluation process. They have awarded us the funding for the fascia repairs, but they're holding off to see what the full study shows and what we decide we want to move forward with, so that we don't end up having to tear down or replace anything that they already fixed. They want to be responsible with those funds. So we're just in a holding pattern while the engineers are assessing the waterfront park and we get the waterfront park advisory committee together. And as far as our specific conversations with the National Park Service, I believe that'll be discussed in executive session as part of some pending litigation.
Okay. And we're expecting the results from that, the engineers in June-ish, right?
Late summer, we actually just got the full schedule this week.
Right. So we did get a schedule from McSweeney Engineering on that, and the full report is due July, August.
July, August.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep. Then that'll have all the engineering study, the bathymetrics, all those studies that they're doing right now, the uphill study, all of that will be done, and they'll have a gap report for us on by August.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Next would be, is Kurt here? Oh, hey, there he is. So I know that we have some code edits coming down the pike from the Planning Commission, and we're working to get those back up here to council for first reading as fast as we can. Some of those are in regards to the amount of development and growth that we've seen. So my question would be to the Hotel Inn Express development that was over the intersection of Wheatley and Salem. How does the new code edit potentially impact that development? And will we be able to take into consideration a little bit further than we have in the past with the traffic impact analysis and how far those expand, just to make sure that the other developments that are already built or being built are taken into consideration prior to the development being approved for the Holiday Inn Express?
Okay, sure. So first of all, they haven't submitted anything. We've just had a number of meetings, I think, over the last few years on that. So I'm not sure if they'll ever officially submit, but should they submit, the changes so far that have been considered would include creating standards for the hotel, because right now there's no real standard for site plans for hotels in our code, surprisingly. Creating standards for approving the hotel for the Planning Commission, making that approval a public hearing. That's basically notice to the residents or property owners next to it. Those are some of the major ones. Then, as you were stating, increasing the traffic impact study analysis that they're going to have to do. They would have to pull in for over a mile and all of the previous and existing traffic impact studies with their proposal. So that would go to the Planning Commission as well. if they have some existing trees, so those would be, you know, essentially there'd be a percentage that have to be kept, not just mitigated. So those are the main things, I think, you know, again, it'd be more transparent and giving citizens and the planning commission some power and, to both approve the project and a little more information, or a lot more information, I should say.
And then in that same note, in some of my spare time, I watch the State House meetings and there's the concurrency discussion or that bill that is being discussed. And just some of the representatives are bringing up the fact that a lot of those concurrency, I guess not regulations, but they're already captured in state statute, but they're not as clear as what this bill would propose. And perhaps some of the issue is the planning commissions throughout the state maybe are not aware of the abilities that they have to kind of make a decision based on utility capacity or whatnot. So is there the opportunity while we work these code edits through the process to make sure that our planning commission, and I know we have a very high caliber, in my opinion, of folks that sit on that board, and we're thankful for them. Is there the opportunity to make sure that they're very familiar with what they can and can't do in regards to development, regulation, and capacities?
Sure, I mean, I can get with the city attorney. We do have some attorneys on that planning commission that are very, as you stated, very astute. And we did make some decisions, I think, a year and a half ago to, you know, basically not vest any project that doesn't have the infrastructure to support it. So that was a big change, I think. So that's, as more development goes on, you know, I think, you know, that'll be really impactful. It's just, development you're seeing was approved, I think, before that. And so, yeah.
Understood. That's all that I have.
Okay, thank you.
And Linda? So this is in regards to the farmer's market saw in here. I just wanted to make sure that our efforts, because I favor a farmer's market, whether that's downtown or maybe at Southside, or as that evolves, I support the idea of a farmer's market. I would just want to make sure that we're working in conjunction with Port Royal and our efforts are complementary to the farmer's market that they have in place. I was wondering if there had been that discussion already, or if there's the plan to collaborate with Port Royal a little bit on the farmer's market proposal.
So we've had one meeting with a business person who would like to talk about starting the farmer's market downtown. So this interests me because the city of Beaufort has a designation for farmer's market. And it has not been active for probably about 6 years. And it is for downtown. It has been in the waterfront park many years. And then it was moved over to North and Bladen Street. And it just didn't get any action. And they ended up closing it down. So we still have that designation. We are approached every year by the state about the farmers market. I feel that it is very important, and this is my opinion, and so that's what interests me in starting this meeting and actually talking about the feasibility and how to do it and who all we would need to talk to, who would we need to collaborate with. This is downtown. It provides access to fresh fruits and vegetables for our downtown community, which is wide and broad. And in a lot of cases, they could walk to get those vegetables. So I think it's very important to probably reenact it. But I also do not recognize that we cannot compete with Port Royal. Port Royal has done a phenomenal job with the farmers market that they provide. The idea is to not have it on the same day as Port Royal. It would be in midweek. It has been in the past midweek. There's some discussions of would it help the downtown businesses for like a Sunday or Monday or a Tuesday? Would it help bring people down and go into the shops, but also provide that access that I feel is very important. It may end up that it could be in Washington Street Park. It's just, we're still talking this through and it's very preliminary. I did want to get it out there so that everybody knew that we are talking about it and the actual need for it. So.
Well, and I appreciate that. And I think downtown is a really good spot for it. I would take this opportunity to advocate for my Mossy Oaks people because I know there's a lot of young families there that would also be able to walk if it was at South Side. We've got parking. They can bring their kids can play in the playground. They can bring their dog and the dog can be over at the dog park. So I think there's a lot of benefits to South Side as well, but I know you guys are very good at what you do. And as that discussion evolves, I look forward to seeing it come to fruition.
And I'd love to see it in Southside also, but you know, we're going to talk it through.
Awesome. Thank you. And then lastly, Mr. Allen. So just looking at, this month and last month's, financial report, I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on the $250,000-ish reduction in the other receivables category.
Yeah, sure. So other receivables are monies owed to the city. So that means that vendors or customers have been paying their invoices to us. I was able to see, I think the town of Port Royal made both of their fire services payments in the month of January. So I think that's attributed for that decrease.
Okay.
Or-
And then there was a $600,000 reduction in the restrictive cash, and that was in the Parks and Tourism. I was wondering if you could
Yeah,
just
that's-
elaborate a little bit on that one.
Sure, that's associated with our Parks and Tourism Revenue Bond. And so we're spending down funds for Washington Street and Southside Park with those bond monies. That's kind of why you're seeing that decrease
Okay.
during that month.
Got it. Thank you. And then I think this is just a Scrivener error, but it said, with November being the 7th month of the fiscal year, I think it would be the 8th, right? Last month was the 7th month?
We're fiscal year, so January is the 7th month of the fiscal year, the July through June.
And this is,
So this is January financials.
okay.
It-
It just
yeah,
says with November being the 7th month of the
Oh, I
fiscal
see.
year.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, it should have been January. That's
Right.
Yeah.
There it
sorry
is.
about that. Good
So,
catch.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank
And I don't have any other questions as it relates to oh, wait, no, there was one more for you, Alan. I'm sorry. The miscellaneous. So there was a new miscellaneous, category and it reflected, $77,000 and that was also in the Parks and Tourism revenue.
Yeah, that was our insurance proceeds that we received for damages associated with Hurricane Helene.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Questions? Thank you.
Any more questions or comments? Okay, now back to the original question. All in favor of the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next, we have a public hearing, Community Development Block Grant, CDBG 2025 Needs Assessment. You're up. And we're going to have you go ahead and give a presentation, and then we'll have the public hearing after that.
Good evening, y'all. Thank you for having me tonight. My name is Michelle Knight. For those of you who don't know me, I am with Low Country Council of Governments, and we are here tonight to do the city's annual needs assessment public hearing, where we will go and talk a little bit about the state's Community Development Block Grant Program and the things that you can do with that program. And then afterwards, you'll open the floor for comments. I believe y'all do your ranking at your next meeting usually. Okay.
Correct.
So just to get us started, we do have to do a little public advertisement. Just to state for the record that the city of Beaufort does not discriminate against the protected classes and fair housing practices in, in either the sale and rental of housing, in residential real estate transactions, or in the provision of brokerage services. If someone contacts you or a city staff member and says they believe that they've been discriminated against, you can have them call us at Low Country Council of Governments, and we will take their information and then make some decisions as to whether it needs to be referred up further after that. The state CDBG program is designed to basically benefit the majority of low to moderate income people by addressing things that will improve economic opportunities and meet community revitalization needs. For Beaufort County, a family of four making less than $80,700 a year would be considered low to moderate income for this year. That number, as you can see, goes up or down based on the number of people who live in your home. The program's been in existence since 1982, and it's changed a lot over the years, but it still is funded under Title I of the Housing Community Development Act of 1974. For this year, we are expecting for the state to receive $19.8 million for 2025. The program statement for this year, the comment period is up on it. However, if you do have comments that you'd like to make known, you can still contact Lisa Huff. She is the point person for the action plan, to give her your comments on it, and they can be set aside for the following year. There are three major grant program categories: community development, business development, and regional planning. And then we're going to talk about our subcategories in community development. Basically, there are 4 subcategories in community development. Community development has a community infrastructure set aside that has an estimated $9 million in it. This is what we usually refer to as our spring water, sewer, and drainage and roads fund. You can apply for up to $1 million. The application requests are just around the corner at March 21st, with full applications being due April 21st. The Community Enrichment Program has $7.3 million set aside for it. This is our fall public facilities program. You have an application request deadline of mid-August and a full request deadline of mid-September. The type of projects that we do under this program are varied. I mean, they can be anything from facilities like libraries or DHEC public health clinics, things of that nature. They can be ambulances or fire trucks for low to moderate income service areas. It could be demolition of attractive nuisance properties that are vacant, that are owned by the city, or residential in a defined target area. And then we can do things like new sidewalks, downtown streetscape, and we can do some regional planning for localities under this program too, or set aside. There's $750,000. It's the maximum you can apply for under this set aside. The third set aside is local priorities. There's $1 million estimated for that set aside. This again has a fall deadline in mid-August, mid-September. These are for small projects, maximum of $300,000, and they are to do things to address economic development in the community, to address public health and safety issues. And then the final thing that they mention is resiliency and narrowing the digital divide. That's basically looking at the ability to do things like broadband in low to moderate income areas. Our final set aside is non-competitive, and basically we call that ready to go. There's $500,000 set aside here for us to be able to address projects that could be funded under community enrichment or community infrastructure, and those projects are in such a state that they cannot wait for a regular funding round. But you have to have done all of your homework, meaning that you've environmentally cleared the project, you've done all of your acquisition, but for having a check in your hand inside 60 days, you could be stirring dirt on a project. So having said that, there are a lot of upfront things that you would need to do. Application requests are ongoing. You make the request and then you have 30 days to submit your full application. You can get a maximum waiver on this, but right now the maximum project amount's $500,000 in that. As I mentioned, all projects that you fund under this program have to address a national objective, which basically means they have to either benefit low to moderate income people, which we talked about, and in South Carolina, I dare say 90% of the projects are funded under that national objective. Aid in the prevention of slum or blight. This is when either on a spot slum or blight basis, or if there's an area, a neighborhood, a corridor that city council is comfortable with identifying as a slum or blight area, then you can apply under that national objective. And then the final one is called an urgent need national objective. And the best example I can give of that right now is our neighbors in North Carolina with the after effects of Hurricane Helene. They have communities that can apply under that national objective in that state's small cities program, basically because you have an urgent health threat there with all of the issues that they're facing. All projects have a minimum match requirement of 10%. The other major grant program category that's a small portion that we want to talk about is business development. This is our old economic development program. These projects typically are brought to us by project managers through Commerce, but they are where we help an existing or an locating business come into a community to be able to provide public infrastructure to them. It could be a water line, it could be a sewer line, it could be a roadway, but it has to be done on publicly owned property. The business commits to private investment and a job creation commitment and signs a performance agreement between the state and the city to do that. The jobs that are created, 51% of them have to go to low to moderate income individuals, and they have to be what we call qualifying jobs, which basically means that you can do that with a high school degree and a year's experience. So we're not necessarily talking about, it could be a trade skilled job through your technical schools programs, but these are not necessarily degreed jobs that we're looking at here. And then the final program that we'll talk briefly about is regional planning. That's a $500,000 set aside that the state has, and they award annually 10 $50,000 grants to each of the 10 COGs in the state for them to come out and do things like this, hold these public meetings or public hearings for communities, sit down with staff when they're developing projects to go over things, plan project development days, of which we're going to have one in May, and do things of that nature to be able to get our communities ready to apply for these funds. And then the final balance of that full set aside is about $700,000 that goes to the state for administration. Still this year, you can get extra points in the competitive rounds for being in an opportunity zone. Still this year, our performance thresholds are basically that you can have no more than 2 open grants and apply for a third one unless it's a planning grant, a regional planning grant, or an economic development business grant. And none of your open grants can only be 30 months old or younger to be able to apply. Also with performance threshold, you can have no more than 1 neighborhood project at a time, which the city doesn't have any neighborhood projects, so that's not an issue, or streetscape project. You can have no more than one ready-to-go project at a time, and you can apply for no more than one project in the same target area unless you have your existing project under construction when you're making application for your new project. Also, while I'm out tonight, we do manage for the region the Home Consortium, which is comprised of all 4 of our counties and all 21 municipalities in our region. In April, we have to do an action plan for it. Our top 3 objectives with the consortium are to rehabilitate substandard housing, to increase accessibility to adequate and affordable housing, and support the development and availability of safe, decent, and affordable housing. And we do this through that program primarily with owner-occupied housing rehab and new construction with our CHODOs. If you have any comments that you would like to get to us regarding the consortium action plan as a separate issue from your ranking of your needs for your CDBG program, please get those comments to us before the end of April, because we'll be working on that plan this month and next month to be able to submit it for our new program year in July. Last year, I think y'all ranked 5 general priorities, and just to refresh your memory, your first priority was drainage improvements in low to moderate income areas. Your second priority was streetscape improvements in low to moderate income neighborhoods. Your third priority was funding for public facilities, transportation, and services, and other activities that would strengthen existing quality of life. And you mentioned some examples: parking garage, event center, education and workforce development, public health and safety. Your fourth priority was housing programs, housing repair for low to moderate income homeowners, and for rental units occupied by low to moderate income renters. And then your fifth priority was public recreation facilities to benefit low to moderate income people. That's all that I have formally. I'll be glad to answer any questions. that you
Anyone have any questions for Ms. Knight?
I have just one question. Have you seen any reduction in funding due to the DOGE actions coming out of DC?
Right now, all of that is up in the air. I think the feeling with the people that I've talked to at the federal level is that there's an expectation that there will be some cut, but that it will not kill the program when we're talking about CDBG. That's what the thought is among the staffers. Now, you know, it's anybody's guess until we get to the end of this, but that's what the comments are that we're receiving about it and the discussions that we have. I will mention one other thing. The gentleman that was up here during the public comment period that was talking about foundations.
Right behind you.
I'm going to mention, just for the record, you know, our housing consortium does owner-occupied rehab, and we have worked on houses in that neighborhood in the past. But the thing is, we cannot go in and do just one thing. And most of the time, if there's a foundation problem, there's a lot of other problems too. And having said that, you know, if we have a homeowner who's qualifying and we touch the house, we have to fix it all. We can't leave it. So we have to kind of marry doing that with kind of keeping our average cost per unit at a certain level. So we can afford to do some expensive things, but we have to have enough people who have issues that are not as expensive that we can address, that we can level out and keep our range, our average cost range per house at a manageable level, so we can try to be good stewards of the money that we're given. Right now, our average cost per house since COVID and increasing building cost has been running actually between $35,000 and $40,000 per house, just to say that. But I'll be glad to answer any other questions.
Ms. Knight? No, you go ahead. Oh, I just have a little follow-up. So, which is, if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is houses that you've worked with that have foundation problems, that kind of eliminates them from.
It doesn't eliminate them, but what I'm saying is if Mrs. Jones calls me and says, I'm having a problem with my house, I own my house, you know, I'm paying my taxes, I don't have any mortgage on it, the property's in my name, can you help me? Okay. My problem is talking to a staffer. My problem is, I've got a spot on my roof that needs to be worked on, and I have a couple of spots where I have sagging floors. We get there and we have someone qualified inspect the house. It's not me or anything like that. But we get there and we have someone look at the house and they come back and they tell us, okay, well, she needs a new roof. Um, she does need some joist repaired in her flooring, but we need to wire her house. It hasn't been rewired in 40 years. We've got to rewire the house. You know, we've got to, her septic, well, it wouldn't be a septic tank problem in Beaufort, but just for this argument's sake, her septic tank needs to be rebuilt. She's got some issues there. And, I don't know, the HVAC unit is on its last leg. Well, we can't leave any of that. And when it comes down to it, when we do that, you know, it may be also that Mrs. Jones is hoping that she's going to get, you know, some new cabinets or a new countertop or something like that. Well, if it comes down to fixing the roof and fixing the wiring and fixing the floor joist and all that, we're going to do that, and you're going to have to deal with the cabinets another way.
Have you ever had a situation where a person had a foundation problem and you worked with them, you could work with them, or is that foundation?
We've had projects where we've worked on floor joist, yes. But have we redone a complete foundation? Probably not.
Just to tie in here, Councilman Mitchell, I did look at some of the language, and I think that for the CBDG grant, it was specifically whether or not it was an urgent safety or a structural issue, but foundations did qualify. So obviously, like what you're saying, there's other factors at play because
You're not going to do housing with CDBG funds other than to provide material for exterior things like roofs and painting and doing a handicap ramp where you have volunteer help, and you're doing a neighborhood project, which isn't something that they're allowing this year in the program. CDBG, the state, South Carolina's CDBG program, quit doing housing rehab the way we do it in the home consortium in the mid to late 90s. Okay. Now, you'll go to communities where there are entitlement areas where they may be doing housing with their CDBG funding. But it takes an entitlement area that has gets a big chunk of funds to be able to do that too. And, most of the only entitlement area that we have, or the only community that we have in our region that's accepted entitlement status is the town of Hilton Head Island. And I think last look, they get somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000 a year, which isn't a lot considering the fact that you have to do a 5-year consolidated plan, you have to do an annual action plan, then you have to do a CAPER report. There's a lot of staff things that go along with it. But it does give them some flexibility, and they saw the fact that it benefited them to do that because they could not compete in the state program the same way City of Beaufort and Bluffton does, and be able to secure $700,000 projects or $1 million projects because they, for whatever reason, they couldn't score well enough, whether it was just a perception. I mean, I know there are poor places in Hilton Head, just like there are everywhere else. But
Ms. Knight, couple years ago, it wasn't you, I can't recall who it was that I spoke to, about the, I'm sorry, my mind just blinked on me.
it's okay.
The Home Consortium,
Right.
about coming into the Old Commons and, Northwest Quadrant to see. And one of the big issues, Number one is it had to be owner occupied, and a lot of the heirs property, that created a lot of problems.
Right.
And then, some of them were so far gone that you couldn't do it because there's only so much money you could do it. There were a lot of issues like that. And,
The Northwest Quadrant is a tough area to
Yes.
do it in, yes.
yeah, well, I remember I had asked, and they came down and talked to a number of people there, and they ended up with hardly any results, I don't think. But, if you could take another look, possibly, and see what we could do in there, it'd be appreciated.
We can try. I mean, we're always willing to try, but,
Yeah, you never
you
know.
know,
If we
it's
get one, that's
almost-
one more than what was
Right.
done.
it's almost like talking about that economic development program. You've got to kind of have the right house,
Right.
you know, that isn't too bad, but does have problems, that you catch it at the right time, that it's not heirs ground, you know, but we get calls, and we, you know, anyone who calls us, we vet them to see if we can help them. And if we can, we try our best. That's
That-
all we can do.
I see a lot of what you do, and it's very much appreciated.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna have public comment in just a second. Are you asking a question or you want to make a comment? Okay, yeah, go ahead. Joe Mack, you need to come up to the microphone. Yeah, but you need to come up to the microphone and give us your name, your address for the record. You're on TV, so you gotta.
Just a simple question, but, Joe Mack, City of Beaufort, Boundary Street. So the ma'am she listed, she listed 5 priorities from the City of Beaufort. So my question would be, number 1 was drainage, and number 5 was public recreation. Does it say on there whether the city put them in any particular order? In other words, is number 1 weighted more than number 2, or? Thank you.
Well, I mean, the city ranked them in the order that they felt the priority was. And typically what we do, unless there's a reason we can justify jumping, we try to focus on the top 3. Right now, the city does have what I call a recreation project. They have the Washington Street Park. I think that started, is under construction now.
Right.
They also have another project, Spanish Moss Trail, that we're trying to get through acquisition so we can complete it. And then the final project they have is Calhoun Street, and I think that's a drainage project that y'all are looking at. It's either drainage or streetscape, so forgive me if I don't get that. I'm not the point person on it.
Okay.
But, so you do have some active projects that we're working on, but hopefully we're going to wind some of those up before the end of this calendar year, or I'd say calendar year, the end of the 12 months, where maybe we could focus on some other things with y'all. Okay?
Thank you. If there are no more questions, I'm going to open this up for public comment, public hearing. Do we have Dan? The man? Dan, give us your name again and address.
Bill Blackman, 1010 Duke Street,
Okay.
in the northwest quadrant of Beaufort. The reason I'm standing is because I read through the whole presentation and I heard what you said. I still don't understand the situation. Are you, if a homeowner occupies a house and it has, issues with the house, they are to call your office? Or do they call the city and the city handles it? Is it an individual house?
If they're looking for grant funds to try to fix their house, they need to call our office. What I was talking about in the first part of the presentation is if someone comes up to Mayor Cromer and says, you know, I think Joe Smith over here, landlord's been discriminating against me. They won't let me rent a house for whatever reason. He can send them to us and we will take the complaint and then forward it to the places that it needs to be forwarded. But if, you know, Mrs. Brown comes up and she's hunting money to work on her house, then yes, have her call us. Okay?
So it's an individual thing rather than a program.
The single-family housing repair program is individual based. The city of Beaufort does not have to come to us and ask for money to do a project. You know, anyone in this room who's income qualifying and owns their house and has issues could call us and we'll talk to you and see if we can help you with your house. Okay?
Thank you.
All right.
That's what I was trying to figure out, is whether we can use our program in conjunction with this funding from Low Country or not. And you can already,
Pull your mic back.
Yeah, there you go.
my voice is probably loud enough without the
I can
microphone.
hear you, but the rest can't.
I think we can see a problem here, can't we? The problem is that the MOU is going to eliminate foundations. The Low Country is basically saying foundations are eliminated. And I think she's also saying you can't combine the two, which is kind of strange. Why can't you do foundations under one program and the rest of the house under another program?
She's gonna address
Yeah.
that because that's,
Yeah,
Ms. Knight, please.
they have to finish the project.
I have more questions.
We have tried to do that before. We found that it works best that either we need to go in and do what we can do and let somebody else come in behind us or vice versa. Usually it's vice versa. Because when we partner those things together, if you end up having a problem, then there's a discussion and there's a lot of back and forth about, well, what caused it, whose responsibility is to pay for it, all of that. And it can end up being difficult to get around. But we've attempted it before. It doesn't work out well, we found with past experience. So it's better, you know, if you've gotten funding from, you know, Joe Smith Agency, do your work, finish it, then let us come look at what needs to be done and we'll do the other things. So if your program will do the foundation, let them do the foundation, let them finish, sign off on it, then come to us for the other things. Okay?
Thank you. I'll probably have more discussions with her offline. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Public comment? I mean, for the hearing? Okay, hearing none, public hearing is closed. Okay, Scott, we need to get her a list of our top priorities by next.
Yes, Mayor, we will bring you a list of proposed priorities, and then you have the ability to reorder them on the dais before you adopt them by resolution.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is approval of minutes. You have a motion?
Second.
Okay, this is for the work session, regular meeting of February 11th. All right, any discussion or changes? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, now to old business. An ordinance for the lease of commercial space that is part of real property owned by the city of Beaufort, South Carolina, located at 500 Carteret Street to New Story Leasing LLC. This is second and final reading.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, Linda, you want to give us a brief description?
This is an ordinance that allows for the lease of office space within 500 Carteret Street. There is currently a lease on this by New Story Lending, and this is just we're renewing the lease. It is a 2-year term and with a 2-year extension.
Okay, any questions for Linda? Okay, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, next is an ordinance to amend the Code of City of Beaufort, Section 8-2003. Vehicles and property may be removed. This is second and final reading. Do you have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, JJ, you want to give us a brief overview?
Good evening, council. This is the ordinance to amend to amend the Wrecker ordinance section 8-2003. And then the following action is to adopt a fee schedule for that. If council will remember earlier in 2024, we met with the representatives from the Wrecker community and worked with them to develop a standardized fee schedule that they felt was appropriate to the market here in Beaufort. We reviewed fee schedules from a couple of different states and areas and the highway patrol fee schedule, and we believe the fee schedule and the changes to the ordinance that you have in front of you today are appropriate for this area, and it would standardize those. These are only for when law enforcement calls a tow truck, so the on-call tow truck schedule. This doesn't affect what tow trucks or wreckers can charge if a private citizen contacts them.
All right, any discussion, questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, next is an ordinance to amend city ordinance number 2024-11 regarding the fiscal year 2024-2025 City of Beaufort budget to provide for the inclusion of a schedule of maximum allowable fees for rotation list calls. This is second and final reading.
Move to- and
Second.
Whichever way,
All right, JJ, another
either one
overview.
of us.
This is just the formal adoption of the fee schedule that was referenced in the ordinance you just adopted.
Okay. Any discussion, comments? Okay, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, that concludes old business. Now we move to new business. Public hearing and first reading on an ordinance to amend the City of Beaufort zoning map to include parcel R 120-002, 000-0045-0000, Christensen Park, rezoning from T3S Suburban District to T1 Natural Preserve. This is first reading, but first, before we do any vote or motion on it, I want to have Kurt come up and do a presentation, and then we will open it up for a public hearing.
Sure, I figured I would just give both of the presentations at the same
Be fine,
time, but
yeah.
you do have to take two separate actions on each one, and obviously next month as well. But there's two properties here, Cuthbert Park and Christensen Park, so I guess I'll start with Cuthbert Park. They're both being proposed to be rezoned from T3S, which is a single-family suburban residential district, to T1 Natural Preserve. So in the case of Cuthbert Park, it's the property that's kind of highlighted in that triangular shape there, and I guess it's kind of a bluish color. It's a really pretty park if anybody's been there. It's kind of a hidden gem, I think. But right now that is zone T3S. It's at the end of Cuthbert Street, over by kind of Lafayette, behind the cemetery, if you will. Everybody's been back there. It is on the water. You can see the zoning here, the T3S, kind of, just surrounding all those waterfront properties. Just a look at the floodplain map for those properties. So, and this is what it looks like, kind of the street view of that. And then the T1 Natural Preserve is as you can see from the matrix there, it's allowed really in on any property. So the thought is, and then the T1 district, what it's classified there on the screen. So basically it restricts development. It only allows for natural open spaces, and it does allow for structures related to a public park or something of that nature. So should the city ever decide to, build some kind of structure there or expand or whatever it wishes to do, you would still have the ability to use this as a more, I guess, active park and less as a passive park. So rezoning it to T1 Natural Preserve, really protects it from development in the future in perpetuity. Of course, they could, you could sell it to another entity, and the city owns it right now, and they could rezone the property, but it would require the same hearings before the Planning Commission and the City Council. So it kind of adds some extra protection, for the residents and for the people that are, really enjoying the park. And so this was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission actually last year, the end of last year, at a 6-1 vote from the Planning Commission for that T1 district. Then I'll just move to Christensen Park. And I did want to mention that these both came up, I think some of the residents around Pigeon Point and Cuthbert Park kind of brought this to the city's attention, that these were zoned, could allow a development, and the city decided that it would be a good idea to kind of protect them. So the city is the applicant on this, on both of these. So Christensen Park, you can see is kind of, actually, if you see all the stars there, so it's actually much bigger than what I think is thought of as the triangle there on Pigeon Point. It actually includes the landing. So, and I'll get into that later. So it's quite a bit of property there, very, obviously very beautiful and a big part of that neighborhood. And you can kind of see it a little better here, so you can see the arrows. So the zoning here is T3, and actually the county didn't even have a zoning designation for Pigeon Point Boat Landing. And you can see the T3 around the Christensen Park, kind of that triangle there, and those properties on the water. But with some research, which I'll get into here, I probably should just put that next. We found in the 40s, when this was basically dedicated and platted, the boat landing was actually with the Christensen Park. So they're kind of a joint, they're kind of a property that, that goes together. And so this action would be rezoning both of those properties. So again, the T1 district would not restrict the boat landing, or if the city decided to do anything extra out there, like a gazebo or picnic shelter or whatever you can think of. It would not restrict that, but it would restrict any other kind of development. I think we looked at the floodplain map. Obviously, it's pretty low out there, but and here's some pictures of these areas. So, you know, again, really pretty area. A little bit of parking on the street, but that came up to Planning Commission, but it really wouldn't be affected by the zoning change. And you can see the street view for the boat landing. Notice. And so again, it's T1 that's being proposed here, the same zoning districts for both, both being proposed to the T1 Natural Preserve, and, you know, just the same set of circumstances. So.
Okay, thank you, Kurt. Any questions from council?
No questions. Well, question, comment, kind of. So you mentioned that the vote on the planning commission was 6-1, and the one person that voted against it was taking the position that the city should keep their options open. And while I can appreciate that diversity in thought and the courage that it takes us to be the one single vote out, I lean in favor of downzoning these and preserving these as parks. That's what they're currently being used for. I think that's in line with our long-term sustainable goals. And I like the extra layer of protection. I guess my question would be, with Basil Green being zoned as T3N and then Knott Park being zoned, I don't know what Knott Park is, T4, HN or something, but why didn't we bring all the parks that the city has now to the table at one time and just protect all of them in one clean swipe?
Well, I know that we added Christensen Park. That's why we waited on Cuthbert Park. And Washington Park is also zoned, I think T4N. But it has some development there that I think technically would be, you know, it's a little, since we're adding like the band shell and everything, is a little, you know, a little bit of a complication when you look at that T1. It says park structures, but I don't know that it gets into kind of those more entertainment related uses that, I think that's the reason why. Hopefully that makes sense, is
Yeah.
These are definitely passive parks for the most part with some active uses, but don't feel like the zoning would in any way restrict the city and would protect them. Whereas Washington Street Park and the Basil Green have some slightly different uses in the past. And I know they used in Washington Street Park used to have, you know, concerts there and things of that nature that the neighborhood did. It wasn't just purely the city did. So that's kind of why there was some hesitation on those parks.
And the concerts would prevent us from downzoning that to T1?
I mean, it's hard to say because that becomes like an entertainment kind of use if it's not, it's just hard to say. But if you would like to, I mean, I think
I was just wondering why we didn't bring all the parks up at one time that were zoned for T3 or higher and.
Yeah, those two that you listed are the only ones I thought of, and that's the reason why, so.
So, and for Knott Park and Basil Green, they just perhaps have too much on them already to be downzone?
Perhaps, but if you really want to, you know, we can bring those for, I mean, it doesn't really take much extra time, you know, this is, the city's making the application, right? So if you'd like to, you can just direct us.
I guess we'll just say, we can have that conversation later. I just
Okay.
was wanting to know.
Sure. Any other questions?
I think, as we consider things like that, we should also consider the other side of it, that different parks are in different neighborhoods. Different folks may have different ideas about what they want to do there. We wouldn't want to create a situation where it's restrictive to the point where there may not be the level of individuality that suits the neighborhood for that park.
I just want to say thank you to the neighborhoods for calling that to our attention. That little snafu, I guess. I mean, it's always been the intention that I know of the city for them to remain undeveloped, and this will ensure it.
Thank you, Kurt. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and open up the public hearing. Who would like to come first and speak? Ms. Merrill? Give us your name and address for the record, please.
Mayor and council, hello, I'm Kay Merrill, 813 Augusta, Pigeon Point. I have a whole bunch of Pigeon Point folks here. There's backup. And to speak to your issue, I think the county, I know the county maintains Basil Green. I'm not sure whether they own it. You're saying,
I'm saying.
well, you're saying web maintains, well, not very well, but somebody's, anyway,
Somebody from the county.
yeah, sorry, county. Anyway, the county maintains Basil Green, so that's not, as far as I know, not in our purview. But I think Kurt said it all. He called Cuthbert Park a hidden gem. We call both those, all those little parks are just wonderful. I looked up Pocket Park, because that's what I think those parks are. And a pocket park is a safe and welcoming place of temporary escape. And goodness knows, don't we need that right now? So the fact that we have those wonderful hidden gems, lovely little places where we can go and walk dogs or walk children or walk grandchildren or read a book. We have put, the neighborhood actually has put several benches in several of those parks. We've planted trees in collaboration with Public Works. Those are people parks, and they need to be protected. Some of you have joined us last spring for the 102nd birthday of a beloved neighbor. She sat on her bench, the one that we had put there when she was 100 years old.
Size 7 slim shoes.
And I was just going to say, and Councilman Lipsitz absolutely blew us all away because he walked up to her and remembered her shoe size and her favorite shoe. And I promised the police chief I would not say this, but I will. The chief, who had just shortly taken office before that, came to that picnic as well, that party as well. And our honoree was really touched, but she said to me, "That's really interesting clothes she's wearing." So our first woman police chief was in the park. There you are. Love your outfit. Anyway, do the right thing. We know you will. Protect those parks for us and come and join us there because everybody enjoys those parks. I had somebody from Mossy Oaks tell me that he and his wife like to come down to the little fishing landing down at the park and just sit. So everybody uses those parks. Just protect them for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Merrill. Anyone else? Mr. Canning, please give us your full name and address.
Patrick Canning, 212 Burroughs Ave, Beaufort City. Evening, Mayor, Council. On recent occasion, Councilman Mitchell attended a protest in front of City Hall where dressed in his Air Force uniform.
Excuse me, Mr. Canning, that's going to be later on when we have public comment. This is a public hearing on the parks.
Sorry, forgive me.
Okay, that's fine. We'll call you back up.
Okay.
Anyone else about the park, Cuthbert Park and Christensen? Okay, well, now back to the first reading. Do I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, this passes, and that's for both parks.
Now we need to individually.
We gotta do two different votes? Okay, again, we'll do this one for the Cuthbert Park.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Second.
Okay. any
Mr. Mayor, a point of order, you need to have a public hearing for each item as well.
He
For-
held
for
them
the
for
record.
both, I thought.
I thought we were trying to do
Made
for both.
presentation, but
Yeah.
we didn't open it to talk to each one individually.
Right, you have to have a public hearing for
Okay.
each item.
Have a public hearing on Cuthbert Park. Anyone want to speak?
That, it's me again, Kay Merrill, 813 Augusta. Go for it. These are wonderful parks. Whatever that 000 number is, approve that one too. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, hearing none, the public hearing's closed.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, all in, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're done. Okay, next is a request from Beaufort, Historic Beaufort Foundation to host the 2025 Lafayette Soiree on May 10th, 2025, from 6 PM to 10:30 PM with allowance to transport participants from remote parking to 411 Craven Street, signage and waiver of the loud and unseemly noise ordinance with street closures.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, Linda?
Good evening. So the Historic Beaufort Foundation is hoping to host their 2025 soiree at 411 Craven, I'm sorry, Craven Street,
It's
sorry. Craven Street, better known as the Castle. They are asking for street closures on the front and back of the home, which is the Craven Street extension from East Street to the Land's End, as well as on Federal Street from East Street to the bridge, to the first
Not
part of the
Hamilton?
bridge. Huh? No,
Way to Hamilton.
not all the way to Hamilton. For this event. We are working with Lise and Donna on this event. We are going to work out some kinks on this. If approved, we will make sure that everybody's noticed of the street closures, as well as police and fire and everyone is included. And I have Lise and Donna here to tell you a little bit more.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor. and
Hey, Donna,
Councilman.
please give us
Good
your
evening,
name and
Mayor.
address just for the record.
Well, I just want to thank you all very much. And this is our, major fundraising event for Historic Beaufort Foundation. I am Donna Danke. I'm on the board, and I provide the oversight for the soiree every year. This is going to be a fabulous event, and it's going to be a continuation of our bicentennial Lafayette celebration. Appreciate your approval.
And folks, I think we've made a change that I didn't have an opportunity to tell Linda. We're not going to need Federal Street to be blocked. We figured out where our restroom's going to go. It'll go on Craven at the street end. So just Craven, that part.
Okay, thank you. All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, next is a request for waiver for loud and unseemly noise from Fred Singleton. Renewal of vows on Saturday, August 23rd, 2025, from 6 PM to 11 PM in the Hennessy Chambers Waterfront Park.
Move to accept.
Second.
Okay,
Hello,
Jennifer,
Council.
hey.
How are you?
good.
So I'm Jennifer Pointer, now with the downtown operations. So we have today the family with the Singleton wedding renewal and ball asking for noise ordinance waiver. If you have any questions, it's supposed to go to 11 o'clock. It's a mix of DJ and live music from their family members. So if you have any questions, I have the family here.
Okay, any questions, comments? Okay, would you like to say something? Thank you, makes it
Donna, she
easy.
doesn't have to.
She's
Makes
like,
it
I'm
easy.
good.
Okay.
She says as I do.
Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, and congratulations on the renewal. Okay, next is an ordinance amending the business license ordinance of the city of Beaufort to update the class schedule as required by Act 176 of 2020. This is first reading. Have a
Move to
motion?
accept.
Second.
Okay, Alan?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The South Carolina Act 176, the Business License Standardization Act, requires every municipality and county government with a business license tax to update its business licensing class schedule every odd number year to go into effect for the following year. As such, 2025 is a time to update the city's licensing practices to remain in compliance with state law. Be happy answering questions you may have.
Any questions from council?
This is the standard what we do every 2
Yeah,
years.
every 2 years.
Yeah. Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Okay, next is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a memorandum of understanding, MOU, with the Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust for the administration of a housing repair assistance program. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, JJ, you want to give us an update?
All right, good evening,
Aye.
council. We've heard the citizen concerns about foundations and this program not necessarily being enough to address every home with blight that we'd like to. And I'd like to remind council in our background information that we've really been looking at two different programs over the past year. The first is providing housing repair assistance for critical needs in homes currently resided in, and the other one is providing housing repair assistance in dilapidated homes, a lot of which are uninhabited and primarily located in parts of the historic district. Due to funding restrictions at both the state and the federal level, we thought that splitting those two up was a way to make this as bite-sized a problem as we can get to. We plan on working with all of our regional partners to address these issues. This isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. This isn't one program that you have in front of you here tonight that's going to solve all these issues. So the MOU that you have in front of you tonight is very similar, almost identical to the one that you reviewed in work session last month, a couple months ago. And we stayed with this language after speaking to several other attorneys, several of the housing, I don't call them experts, but folks in the housing repair industry. And we decided to stick with this language or propose this language stays the same, excluding the foundations, because we want to see what type of participation do we have in this program, what type of needs do come forward. If we need to adjust as we move along, we can. And again, as we identify more partner organizations to work with, as the Housing Trust continues to identify other partners and programs to work with, we may need to come back and adjust this program, but we think this is a great starting point. The Housing Trust is fully prepared to take this and run with it and get us a program that is in place and functioning to provide the housing repair assistance. Claude from the Housing Trust is here. I'll let him talk for just a minute, then we'll answer any questions council has.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, JJ. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. We are very pleased that we have moved forward very quickly. A couple of things that we want to make sure you know. We are, at the same time that we are looking at this program, we are also looking at the state program and seeing how it will apply. Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust has its accreditation with the state, and recently we have also achieved the environmental requirements for us to look at houses older than 1978. So that has been complete. HUD has certified the trust as adequate to do that. We look forward, and I want to echo what JJ is saying. This is going to be a fluid program. We don't know who's going to apply. We don't know what they're going to apply for. We want to be as flexible as we possibly can and help as many people as we possibly can. And we thank you for your support and your willingness to put money on the table to try and help the citizens of Beaufort. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hicks. Any questions from council?
I
I-
have,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'll defer to you.
No, you
this
go
time.
ahead.
You always.
You
do.
might ask my question. Go ahead.
You might ask my question, but I'll go ahead. Um, To Mr. Blackman's comments, do you think if we were to change it to include foundations subject to your, I guess, final approval, so that if there by some hook or crook was a foundation that could be addressed in a time when funds, you know, in a best hope scenario would be available, do you see that crippling in any way to the program?
So we tried to mirror this with the state requirements, and the state does not allow the replacement or the major restructuring of a foundation. So what we were looking at was how will we address a house that is higher than the cap of $50,000 that you all have agreed to, which, by the way, is higher than other municipalities here. So what we wanted to do was to make sure that we were working within the state guidelines in case we had to go to the state and leverage our funds from here and say we need to address this issue. I think that I will echo what the lady from CDBG said. Foundations, when you get into them, are extraordinarily expensive. There has never been a foundation that I have worked on that even came close to what they thought it was. So what we don't want to create is a situation where we look at a foundation, we think it'll come under the $50,000 cap, they get in there, and next thing they know, it's a $75,000 issue. So we're not opposed to looking at ways in which we can address foundations. We're not opposed to that at all. We just want to make sure everybody understands the resources we have found so far are extremely limited when it comes to foundations. Thank you.
I would think that that argument could probably be made for anything, though, because if you were going in and you really didn't know the full extent of what the repairs were, and you thought it was going to be $30,000, and then you started getting into it and realized that it was going to be more expensive, you essentially do what you can within the cap. So I would say that I don't think that that position is unique to foundations. And I have another question, but to Councilman Mitchell's point and to Mr. Blackman's point, I don't really see how it would be a problem for us even just to strike that language of it being ineligible. And then if we came into the situation where we came across that, it can be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. There's nothing that marries us to paying for foundations if it's not captured in language as being ineligible. So I guess I just don't see what the problem would be. And sure, we can come back and we can evaluate it, or we can have a separate program for foundations. But if I remember, I can't find it right now, but I just remember reading in here that this was going to be kept in a separate pot of money anyway. And then many of the programs that I researched in preparation for this meeting, some of them were HUD programs and rehabilitation programs, and all of them had something that discussed addressing foundations for stabilization or life safety and those kind of things. So I think that there would even be a way for us to mirror many of the other programs that are out there for housing repairs and still leave ourselves flexible enough to address a foundation in the event that it's not a $100,000 repair. So I guess my comment in that regard is I don't see an issue with how it would hurt the program to strike that language.
The only stipulation that we would have would be an understanding that state funds could not be used on a foundation issue. So that it would have to either fall under the $50,000 cap, or you would have to have the additional funds coming from somewhere to make those repairs, and it wouldn't be from the state, which is a $25 million pot of money. So we don't have any issue looking at this the way that JJ described. This is going to be on a house-by-house basis. We're going to come back in 6 months and say, this is what worked, this is what we found. We could get no one apply, we could get 100 roofs apply. So I think the more we get an application, the more we work with it, we can come back to council and say, hey, this is an issue. This is what we need to address. And here are some ideas on how to do it.
Right, and I guess what I wouldn't want to do is if in the event that somebody had, say, a minor foundational issue, but they knew that it was potentially causing something else, they would not apply at all because then they would read in here that they're ineligible for this program entirely because of the foundation issue. So I would be in favor of, language that stated that there would be no state funds that would go towards the foundation. That would come from another pot of money. I don't know what the rest of council feels, but I would personally favor the flexibility of not having that restriction in the MOU.
And I think I agree too as well, because we know the prohibition of using the state funding for foundations, providing more flexibility on our side and knowing that we can go after other repairs from state funds, it seems would give us more flexibility within the program by just excluding its prohibition as far as the foundations are concerned.
We don't have an issue changing that language. I just want to forewarn everyone, and you've
I know.
already heard it here today.
They're expensive. We know.
They are extraordinarily expensive. And when you look at a house in the historic district that also has that designation, then you invite a huge number of other issues. So I agree with JJ. This is flexible. This is gonna be a make it as we go. We want to serve as many people as we possibly can.
So if I could, I'd like to step just outside of this conversation, but still be within the housing trust. And we have a representative on the Housing Trust Board right now, Mr. Stewart, who's here with us tonight. And maybe he can speak to this, but I was watching the county's meeting last night and I was not aware of the amended changes coming down regarding the intergovernmental agreement. And my first question, and I can explain what my concern is, but my first question would be, in the event that we have a valid concern regarding one of the amendments made, how would we address that if the county has already passed a resolution in favor of changing it? And I'm not sure why there wasn't discussion amongst all the partners ahead of time regarding the amendments and what that language would look like, just to make sure everybody was on the same page. And if that conversation happened, and I don't remember it, I apologize ahead of time. I don't remember ever discussing the language change. And I do have a concern. Maybe that concern could be clarified and it's not an issue at all. But how would we go back if there was a valid concern that perhaps county council didn't mention last night and address that after they've already voted on it?
So I'll let Mr. Stewart talk about the history. I can tell you in the year that I've been here, we've had at least 3 meetings with representatives of all of the areas that have come to those meetings, that have talked about the three issues of the existing IGA. Last night's vote was a vote for the county. That document will then go to each of the member partners of the trust and say, here's what the county signed off on. Here's why. And really it addresses 3 issues. One is the old agreement said that we were not our own fiscal agent. And because we became a 501c3, that gave us the authority to become our own fiscal agent. Number 2 was that the board of the Housing Trust, part of the board is representatives of each of the 9 members. The second issue that we resolved was that at any point where an issue is brought before the board and those 9 members say no, a majority of those 9 members say no, they can veto any action of the board. The board is 16 members. The third thing was what happens if Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust dissolves and goes away? What happens to the money? What happens to the entity? That was more of a legal determination. So we've had many discussions, and you just haven't gotten the signed copy from the county yet. We've asked for that today, and that will go to each of the members for their review.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. If Mr. Stewart could just speak a little bit to it, and then if my concern is still relevant, maybe I'll just put it out there, and then if you can clear it up, then good, and maybe, yeah, we'll see where it goes from there.
Thank you. Dick Stewart, don't live in the city, have property in the city, and I'm your designee on the board of the Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust Incorporated, a registered 501c3. The studies that led to this, and I didn't bring the presentation with me, but I'd be happy to send you copies, led to the formation of a housing trust fund. That fund, just like you have a parks fund, you have an ATAX fund, and other funds, was just the enabling legislation to set aside some money into a fund. Because that was intended to be multi-jurisdictional, some from the city, some from the county, some from the town of Bluffton, some from the city of Hardyville, and so forth. It required somebody to be in charge of those funds. I served as your representative on an advisory board, but the fiscal agent was a group called Community Works out of Greenville that the county selected with approval from the city and the other contributing parties. Those people were paid 10% of the donated funds in the first year, which was $203,000 to provide fiscal oversight. As part of that process, a group was formed, citizens group, included people from all the jurisdictions, plus the hospital, plus I think from the school district and from some of the major contractors in the area that are familiar with home building. They looked at the Jasper County plans for housing, the city of Beaufort plans for housing, the city of Bluffton plans for housing, the town of Hilton Head plans for housing, and 2 or 3 additional plans related to housing that had been done in LoCog and other areas. And out of that came up with a recommendation. And that recommendation led to the hiring of the Azakura Robinson consulting firm. And if I'm right, that study and that report is on the website for the trust. So you can look up BJHT and you can read that on there. In that report, they recommended that the fund should be replaced by a 501c3 as we continue to grow. We grew faster than Community Works expected. So while they signed the agreement in January of 2023, in October of 2023, they said, you don't need us anymore, you can operate without us. That's great news because instead of sending 10% of those funds to Greenville, we got to keep those funds here and we can use those. And you see the results of some of the expertise we're able to afford out of that. The other things are things that are important. For instance, the enabling legislation, the Measure Act that calls for the setting up of the funds only would allow you to use those funds for what they describe as affordable housing. That means housing serving people that earn less than 60% of the average median income in Beaufort County. That significantly limits you and pretty much says you're not in the workforce housing business and you can't help there. And as some of you saw at the presentation last November, we are in desperate straits for affordable housing here. An economist for the Federal Reserve of Richmond showed a chart in that. If you look at this is the chart, there's a line here that says this is the average median income, AMI, in Beaufort County. And there's a chart showing the number of houses where the average median income family could buy the average medium priced house within this county. There has not been a single house in the last 24 years that the average medium income family could purchase an average medium priced house. Not one. Much worse in Charleston, much worse than Myrtle Beach. And that's not just Beaufort County, that's both Beaufort and Jasper County. So now we have the ability to work with workforce housing. We have the ability to work with home repair. Claude has just described to him how he and Jennifer and the staff there have become qualified to deal not only with houses built after 1978 when lead paint was outlawed. They sat through what must have been great fun listening to all the lead paint risk and stuff. So we're now qualified with dealing with houses that were built before 1978. And that includes a lot of houses in the city of Beaufort. Having someone be able to tap into that is important. Now, Claude is diplomatic and gets along well. Everybody likes him. I'm older and a little more crotchety, so I'm going to tell you something here that when I first heard it, offended me. The state has between $20 and $25 million in housing repair funds every year. Some of it may go through LoCog, some of it may go through other areas. But the year that I first got involved in this, at the request of the city and serving on this board, I began to do some research and say, how many houses are we getting repaired? Now, in fairness, the department has done an absolutely splendid job creating a very difficult 20-plus page process to apply for funds to help you in your house. And they will never, ever, ever be accused of giving a penny to anybody that doesn't deserve it. Because in the preceding year, they repaired one house in South Carolina with that $20 million plus fund. That house was in York County. They put a porch on it, they put a deck on it, and they put a roof on it, and that house was built in 2002. Not one in Beaufort County and not one in Jasper County. We need to bring those dollars here because what I've learned listening to Claude and Jennifer and folks with expertise in the field is that the program that we've designed with the Housing Trust has three major components. One is creating new housing and preserving of housing. Two is the repair and maintenance of housing we're talking about here, and I congratulate you on setting aside some funds, and I know the board was very happy to allocate $100,000 of matching funds to help with that. And we are forever grateful to Senator Davis and our cohorts and our legislative delegation for receiving a $3 million grant from the state to help us with that, which also would not have been possible under a fund. But the third one is down payment assistance. There are people that would like to get in houses but can't afford it. We have partnered with a hospital to help some of their employees have houses here and using some of those funds for assistance in down payment. We have partnered with Habitat for Humanity so they can use some of those funds for down payment and those folks can get into homes too. So what happened last night, I like you read the newspapers. Sometimes I'm surprised at what I learned from our folks across the street over the county, the things that are going on. But having served on county council, I said, like you, sometimes got up and read the newspaper and said, I was at that meeting and I don't remember it being quite like what I'm reading here. So I always read those things with a tablespoon of salt. But in any event, there's been some confusion in the legal matters, confusions in the financial matters, and been some confusion in the staffing matters. These are the sorts of things when you've got 6 municipalities and 2 counties and 1 independent group, Soloco, which is a group of really well-meaning, hardworking folks who don't have a formal, they don't legally exist, but they do exist. When those folks all have to get together and decide on what they're doing, there is not a simple rhythm where they can just sit down at a table and do something. I'm delighted that after the length of time it has taken, we were able last night to get something really very straightforward. And what it said, just as Claude described it, is instead of the fund that was originally put together, we have arrived at the point as contemplated by the Azakura Robinson report, where the 501c3 is governed by a group of people that sit on the board. I'm your representative there. We now have fiduciary responsibility and legal liability to provide oversight to those funds and manage them as our corporate responsibilities call for us for that nonprofit. We're legally liable if we mismanage your funds. We're fiscally liable to report back to you, just as we have been issuing regular reports. Now, if your question is, what would you do if what the county did is slightly different than what you want to do? I'm happy to sit down and go through that at any length, and I'm sure Claude would be happy as well. But it really doesn't say much more than you were a fund, you have become a 501c3. We modify that other agreement to do what we always contemplated would be happening by that Azakura Robinson report. I hope that's helpful.
It is. So here's my question, and it's just coming from the language in the amendment, but it looked like there was a clear distinction in the trust board and the oversight board, because there was language that said that the Beaufort Housing Trust could add members as the Robinson study recommended in managing the organization. But if there's a clear distinction, it sounds like what you're saying is the oversight board is the responsible party for the housing trust, but the way the language was written, it almost looked like there was being a clear delineation and a difference in between the oversight committee and the housing trust board for which they could add members. And so for me, I didn't see anything else other than just implied language that talked about how the housing trust would stand up their board of directors. And I do believe that the state statute requires a board of directors for a nonprofit, and that could be one person, but the IRS recommendation is for that to be a minimum of 3. And so how does changing the word from board to oversight board work within, I guess, the makeup of who governs those funds? I know that body made up of appointed members from the collected partners oversees and has the ability, to your point last night, to veto any decision made. But my concern is if in the event the housing trust does not stand up a board of directors aside from the oversight, or what would be the oversight board now, would we be in violation of the state statute governing nonprofits?
The full functioning board has been in place and operating legally and with full authority for well over a year now. We were in place before Claude came. The document is dragging along to bring confirmation to what's currently occurring. During that process, there was what I will describe as ineffective communication between some of the people across the street and some of the other people across the two-county region. And so those folks said, wait a minute, I'm putting my money in here. How do I know what's going to happen to it? We said, I'll tell you what, you had one vote out of 7 before. You now have one vote out of 14, but we can give you some super majority on that, so we'll make sure we don't spend your money in ways you don't approve. That's all we did in that. Now, in the Azakura Robinson report, there were a couple of things that were included. One was that we should add legal, financial, and real estate expertise to our board. We've added a lawyer, we've added a banker, we've added a retired banker, and we've added a real estate broker to our board. So that's what we've added. Everybody knows them, everybody likes them, everybody's fully aware of who those people are: Jan Malinowski, Caitlin Reed, those folks. So we've done that. The other thing the Azakura Robinson report says is that you should not have employees of local governments on the board. The reason for that is if you're an employee of, certainly the city wouldn't be this way, but some other fictitious city in a county far away, someone in that city could tell that person how to vote, and that person would probably have to do it because that's what their employment was dependent upon. We've got a little work to do there, but as a few folks have said, it's really hard to find qualified employees in a town this small, and so we've kind of voluntold somebody. That's working out fine. The answer to your question is that in the 2.5 years that I've been working with this organization, and in the 11 months, April will be a year that Claude has been here, and Jennifer, how long have we been here? 10 months now, something like that? 14 or 15 months, whatever that's been. We've had one vote that was not unanimous, and that was because a particular person wanted to make a statement, that not because they opposed what we were doing. So I don't want you to think there's any risk here, but if you have any concern about anything that's happening there, I'm your representative. You let me know. I'm going to carry your water, and I'm going to do what you ask me. Now, if you ask me, and I think it's a little questionable, I'm going to ask these guys if they agree with me.
I would too.
I don't want them to think that I'm just a puppet to whoever happens to call. But I represent your interest, and there are other people that represent other interests. And I can assure you that when we went out last year and asked for proposals to do home repair, and we got grant applications from Help of Bluffton, we got grant applications for Deep Well, and now we have this partnership with this MOU today. I'm representing you and trying to keep repair dollars coming here. They're representing those organizations trying to keep repair dollars going here. And there's one group, not on this board, but related, and they said, we want to do this only if in the unincorporated areas and not in the incorporated areas, not with the funding they're providing, but with a special grant. And I told them, as I would be happy to invite you, if you will give us additional money for housing and you want to spend in a particular place in a particular way, we'll put that over there and find a way to do that. Now, I wouldn't say that if we find another thing that's a great opportunity 90 days later and you didn't contemplate it, we didn't contemplate it, we're going to come back to you and perhaps ask you to reconsider so we can invest those funds where we can get the best results. That's what being on this sort of board is. I will tell you that in my years with nonprofits, and I'll refer to the Port Royal Sound Foundation, which we founded some time ago with a good group, I have never seen as many interested parties trying to help with housing, whether it's ownership, rental, whatever. And there's a lot of things that have to be taken apart. Design issues, cost issues, impact fees, zoning. There's a lot of issues, none of which is more important than financing. if we can funnel some of that energy and those resources to the expertise that's being developed at the Housing Trust, what come out of the back end of that stuff will be huge. There have been significant development investments that want to come here and do something. We got to figure out how to let that happen. We cannot continue on a path where a teacher and fire person or police officer can't afford a median priced house in this area, and we don't have those people. We cannot continue to let grocery stores and restaurants close because they can't get help. We cannot continue to not have first responders when we have issues that are serving people. So we have to solve this workforce problem, or we're not going to get there. I'm happy to answer any question I can on a daily basis, happy to go to those reports. Love for you to look at the meetings online or come join us if you'd like. Love for you to get involved in all of that sort of stuff. I will tell you that having the experience that Claude and his resume brings to us from his work in other states, plus his connections to the Low Country because his family grew up in the Charleston area and still has roots there. Having that here gives us a leg up on things that are happening at the state and federal level. Claude didn't mention this to you, but he's recently been asked and is now serving as a representative for affordable and workforce housing on the bank of the Federal Home Loan Bank out of Atlanta, first one ever from this area. The Federal Home Loan Bank out of Atlanta is working on some grants to help us with heirs properties here. We think the trust, trust is applied. We think the trust is qualified. We hope we'll be able to help deal with some of these problems, Northwest Quadrant and other places. So my concern is making sure everyone here feels like you're getting good representation on the board. I am not at all concerned that 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now, the county and some other folks aren't going to say, we're getting great results. We'd like to do more work here, and we're not concerned about who's going to be on the board. The county has let their position lapse. The person that was on it retired and hurt his arm, had surgery, and he stepped off. They've still got a vacancy. Many of you may know Tom Hens. Tom's a retired banker, literally an Eagle Scout and a great guy. Tom is from Hilton Head. He's on our board. He now works for the chamber, and he's been organizing workforce and affordable housing for the last 3 or 4 years. Great guy. They may appoint him, they may not, but I can tell you he's a great advocate for the group and for the community while he's on this board. So legally, I wouldn't have written the language the way it's written either. But sometimes if you're dealing with folks across the street, and some of their attorneys have been involved in the front end of this, and they're leaving in a particular timetable, and they've got something they want to do in a certain way, the language is what I would describe as, I think the exact words I used when I was talking with Claude about it is, this doesn't look troublesome, it just looks clumsy. And that's the way I would describe it.
And that's exactly how I would describe it as well. And I agree with everything that you said. I do wish that they would have communicated that better to us and let us know some of the changes that they were thinking about and what the language would look like prior to voting so that we could have the opportunity to kind of weigh in on that prior to. Now, I don't know what that looks like. Obviously, you know, the changes I think are beneficial for the housing trust overall. I just don't want to have the city get in a bind legally because of a clumsy change that could have been worded or clarified better than what it is. And that was my concern is with changing board to oversight board, that would obviously be for a reason. It wouldn't just be for nothing at all. And the way the language read to me was it was implying that there would be an internal board, but there was no discussion of how that would be stood up aside from the housing trust being able to add members based on the study recommendations. That was my only concern is putting us in a position legally that wouldn't favor the city. But I appreciate everything that the Housing Trust is doing. I appreciate the work that you're doing as our liaison for that board. And I did see the update in regards to you because it's on your website. And so thank you. But I did want to throw that out there, and I guess we'll probably see that in our next meeting.
Thank you. Take your time and read the Azucura Robinson report if you'd like to. I thought it was a good report. I thought they did a good job with everything except naming that, because whoever named that firm picked some pretty bad choices because it's hard to spell, hard to remember.
I've
Thank
got
you.
one comment.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for representing us on the board.
Happy to do it.
Thank you.
It's an important issue. Happy to play a small part in a big solution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, now I'll call the question, a resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into an MOU with the Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust.
I would like to move to amend the language to strike out foundation or site pad repairs altogether, so just remove it from the ineligible for funding.
You got a second on that?
Second.
Okay. All right, on the amended motion, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now we go to the original motion, the resolution for the memorandum of understanding between the city manager and Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust
With amendment.
with amendment. All signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Now we come to the section of the meeting of public comment, and we have two people who have signed up. First is Mr. Patrick Canning. Sorry you had to wait a while, but
On recent occasion, Councilman Mitchell attended a protest in front of City Hall where, dressed in his Air Force uniform, proclaimed his displeasure with the Trump administration and Secretary of Defense decisions affecting Black history. In my opinion, this gives the appearance of a violation of Beaufort City Ethics Code, the nonpartisan city council. Additionally, it appears to be a clear violation of DOD Title 133401. Wearing of the uniform. It's not that I don't support Black history, it's how you went about sending your message. The other item I wanted to speak about was Scott Marshall, Beaufort City Manager, felt the need to voice his personal frustration with our new Republican president on Facebook. He went on to characterize the president's behavior as a bullying thug. In further response, we are the federal law. How very authoritarian of him. I hope the ghosts of Lincoln and Reagan choke him in his sleep. Some may want to brush this off as a euphemism, but I believe Scott Marshall was clearly voicing his personal hate and contempt for our President Donald Trump. The city manager's comments are a direct violation of City Code of Conduct found on page 15, political activity found on page 21, social networks found on page 24, and conduct warranting disciplinary action violation of city policies found on page 48. Does Scott Marshall feel this way about Beaufort City residents that support President Trump? Should we expect that he would have a personal bias against others in our community? Should we expect more of this type of activism? Like it or not, we have an election process in this country where a Republican president has been duly elected, winning the Electoral College as well as the popular vote. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Canning. Okay, next we have Mr. Rob Cahill. You can go after Mr. Cahill. Yeah. You want to steal his thunder?
I'm Rob Cahill, 608 Water Street. First is a point of personal privilege. Today is my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Don't ask why I'm here on my birthday. So I do welcome your good wishes, and before anyone asks me how much older I am, it's a math problem. It's a multiple of 25. So please, I hope none of us here need your calculator
100?
to figure out what that is.
100?
You don't look it.
My non-agenda item has to do with trees. Specifically, several tree limbs from a residential property along North Street between Rebo and Bay. They extend across the sidewalk at a height of approximately 6 feet. So I'm 6'2" last time I checked. So it's I bunk into them. It's a problem. I've lived in the City Walk the last 7 years, regularly walked to downtown Beaufort through North Street. 2019, first year, I bonked my head some fierce on one of these lower hanging branches. The owner happened to hear the sound, came out, and I asked him politely, I can do that if I'm really focused. And he said, well, you just need to walk around them or walk under them. So I was on a public sidewalk. I was kind of perturbed. I think I expressed some expletives and God was taken in vain. But his cavalier response really surprised me. I understand he's a former city councilman, that's just pertinent factual information. Last month, I'm walking home from BIF, International Film Festival. It was pouring down rain, so I was wearing a hoodie. And it was dark, and I bonked into it really bad. So happy was I not. And I replayed in my mind his little snarky remark. I don't know what actions I can take. I went to 3 hours of the planning commission meeting last week when they were talking about trees, and it went so long, I left before the public comment period. But I'll write these comments down so they can go into the official record, because I don't want there to be a third time. Because if there's a third time, it's shame on me. So thank you for listening. It's probably a little tricky being a former councilman who my receptivity to his remarks was pretty imperial, and I don't think Beaufort's an imperial place. So I'm going to keep track of this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cahill. And now, Mr. McDermott.
Joe Mack, 1809 Bounty Street. I'm a member of Beaufort Trailblazers. And I speak also as somebody who went to every grade of school in Beaufort growing up. Mitch Mitchell has always carried himself well. I've never seen Mitch Mitchell lose his temper. You can never say that about the federal government. I'm going to digress there. That's about enough as I'll say about that. But sort of like a bicycle update. So yeah, you know, the bicycle is one of the greatest freedoms. Running, walking, great freedom as well. So, you know, bicycle accidents are very low in general and in the city. So there was a couple mishaps today. They do happen. There was one on Ladies Island. There was one at Pigeon Point Road and Boundary Street. And both victims brought their bicycles to me after the fact, the same day. This was today. So the person at Pigeon Point and Boundary described the accident. I said, what happened? What happened? So she said, an old guy turned left to go on Pigeon Point Road and cut the corner too sharp and hit her. And she's walking like this as she went to the ER. You had your retreat. The lady on Ladies Island, I know her too. I don't know what happened with her, but her front wheel got tacoed. It looked like a potato chip. And then the other girl's bike, it just tore off something on the back wheel, a little derailleur. But anyway, so so yeah, the public retreat, the yearly retreat, there wasn't much public participation in person. I think more people elected to watch online, because last year there was more people. Yeah, so the community, you know, there's many people in the community that you know, hoping you do the right thing. We gave you that proposal. We thought we would have had a workshop by now. Hell, we were willing to spend 25 grand to get 100,000 grant. So we showed that, and then there was two reasons, you know, that would help give us professionals to know what they're doing, and then also that you thought we were serious. So we were willing to spend our own money, 25 grand. We weren't asking for any money. So, you know, growing up in Beaufort, you know, I know my own history from moving around this place and what's occurred. And everybody has their own take, and sometimes it gets similar, and sometimes it gets different with your perspective. So we thought that would occur at the workshop, and let the chips fall where they fall. The traffic, you know, Beaufort, you know, when I moved here, there was no waterfront. I mean, and when I was a teenager, the traffic, I mean, now it's a zoo. I mean, this place, it's bigger. But it's like the same area. I don't know how to describe it, but it's kind of new. All these people moving here, they're certainly welcome. I've met some very nice people, but I'm getting carried away, but I'm just wondering about, you had it on your number 5, you know, something with the grants, community block grant with, priority with public recreation. So knowing what I know, I mean, people don't want to come down here. I mean, they're probably, you know, feeding their kids or working 2 jobs, 3 jobs. They can't afford a house. You heard about these houses. And shoot, in the old days, it was $400 a bedroom. Now it's over $1,000. But I hope you all would listen to the majority instead of the 5 people that keep saying no to everything. You can't get anything done that way if you listen to the 5. And 2 families in Beaufort that's trying to run everything. I mean, it needs a little more balance. And I see these same comments. I mean, I've seen them decades ago. Nothing for the youth. You've seen them. It's a retirement community. It's a military town, and it pains me to read that. It really does. And when I spoke at the retreat, I was the only one there. I mean, I must be a really black sheep, but you know, I did get a compliment from somebody, and he said he was watching it live. He said, "Good for sticking up for the youth," or whatever. But we're you know, we could talk about it, and then there's results. I just hope and pray. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Okay, next, anyone else? Hearing none, we'll move to reports. City Manager's report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just as a reminder, our strategic planning session was 24th through the 26th of February. And to let you know what the next steps are, as well as to let the public know what the next steps are. We had a very productive session, first of all, and I thank you for your time and your complete attention during that process. We're going to workshop the results with you at the April work session to be sure we're all on the same sheet of music with regard to our revised mission, vision, guiding principles, and tasks. And after we workshop that in April, we will bring it back to you in May for adoption by resolution. We'll bring the formal plan back. I'm always proud of our fire department, but never more than last week. We sent 2 different crews to Horry County to lend a hand in the wildfire support. We sent an engine along with those fire crews, and I'm going to call out the firefighters who took part in that and thank them profusely for representing the city of Beaufort and the Port Royal Fire Department with a lot of pride. And that's Captain Adam Jordan, Lieutenant Matt Dominowski, driver Alec Rowe, driver Curtis Yaki, firefighter Joshua Nicoletta, and firefighter Adrian Villalon. Our FY26 budget preparation activities continue. We will look forward to individual meetings with council members during the 1st and 2nd week of April. We will have our first budget public work session on April 22nd. That will be the public's first look at the proposed budget, still in draft form at that time. We'll have a public hearing and first reading of the budget on May 13th. And I will ask Alan to resend the budget calendar to all of you so you have that fresh in your minds as to where we're headed with the budget and what the events are that will comprise us being able to adopt it this year. So that's all. Any questions?
Questions? Okay, hearing none, I'll do the mayor's report. Just very briefly, attended a lot of meetings. The Old Commons Neighborhood Mayor-Managers meeting and gave the opening remarks for the Beaufort International Film Festival. Kudos, I thought it was a great strategic planning retreat. Also want to echo the remarks you made about the fire department and assisting those people up in Horry County. Spoke at the senior leadership of Clemson University in a panel discussion. Also, the State of the Community event was held out at Dawtaw. myself, Councilman Scaletti and Lipsitz judged the debate contest at May River High School over some high school students. And then just getting ready for the Lafayette planning meetings, but they want to remind everybody the 18th, that special event, and hope everyone will turn out. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Councilman Mitchell.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, everyone that's here, still here, that came watching at home. Ditto to attendance at the events that the mayor has already mentioned. I also attended a ribbon cutting, kind of short notice, at the Black Chamber for PRN, and I think it stands for like personal, I don't want to mess it up, so, but they're they're establishing a business with their administrative office on the 3rd floor of the Black Chamber. They're a home health care business. And the young man and his mom, I knew him when he was born, and he lived all of his life away, but he's a native Charlestonian, and, you know, he wanted to start a business in Beaufort, so I was very proud to be a part of that. Welcome he and his mom to Beaufort. I wish them lots of luck with their business here in town. Yeah, I know it's not customary. I normally don't respond to folks who are making comments during the public comment section, but I'm going to respond to Mr. Canning's comments. So it was no disrespect to anyone in the military, me wearing my uniform. I was just trying to make a statement. And that statement is simply this. I served in the military for almost 40 years. I was commissioned on May 14th of 1972, and I retired from the Air Force as a Marine, spent 6 years in the Corps. And I retired from the Air Force Reserve on January 22nd, 2012. It pains me to see where my country is. That we're still talking about issues that's racial, really, let's not fool ourselves, is race-centric. That's what it is. We just seem we can't get past it. I really thought that we would be past it by now. That's certainly what Dr. King thought in his I Have a Dream speech. That's what he thought. But here we are, still mired in it. We have folks who served in the military, but came very close to destroying our democracy on January 6th. And folks complain about me wearing my uniform. It's my uniform. I'll wear it whenever I please. I wore it to make the statement that caused Mr. Canning's comments. I love this country. I raised my hand to die for it. And some of those folks who almost destroyed this country on January 6th raised their hands too. I'm ready to move on. But the country won't let me move on. There's nothing, I wasn't wearing it because I didn't think that President Trump didn't win the election. I know he did. But in January in 2020 was a different story. And it would have been a different story this time too, had Kamala Harris won. It would have been a different story. I was trying to make a statement that can we just kind of move on? Can we just be a country that would just respect each other? And if we can't respect each other, just leave you alone. Just leave me alone, right? Just leave me alone. I came back home by choice because I loved Beaufort. And it hurts me.
Councilman McPhee.
I'm going to take dittos on the mayor's commentary and thank the fire department for all of the efforts in Horry County and for the well-organized retreat, and I will pass it on.
Councilman Scaletti.
Great. So I want to thank the fire department. It's no surprise to me that they stepped up and welcomed the opportunity because that's what they do. So thank you, Chief, for supporting them in that effort. I want to thank staff again for putting on what I feel like was a very successful retreat. As mentioned previously, on March 1st, several of us were able to attend or were invited to attend an Incubate debate at May River High School. I had no idea what that would be because I had never done it before, never heard of it. But there were middle schoolers and high schoolers basically tackling very controversial issues and working through an exercise to debate that and come to a conclusion of it's okay to disagree on things, but be respectful and agreeable. I thought it was a great event. We received emails afterward, I'm sure everybody did, that just thanked us for attending, and I reached back out and said if there's ever an opportunity for me to adopt a debater and work with them ahead of the debate, I would love to do that because I think I could sharpen my own skills. That's something I didn't do well in high school, and so maybe there's a chance for me to kind of go back and sharpen myself. They liked the idea and asked me to work with the gentleman, James Payne, who won the event. He's going to be preparing for the Nationals, and that's in May. So I look forward to hopefully adopting him as a debater and working through understanding both sides of an issue. And on March 7th, we had our leadership. That's the first Friday. And this time was the school district. So we split up into groups and we went into the different schools. And I'll just say, I'm going to mess the last name up, Geyer, Chairman Geyer. So he's been with us this entire meeting, and just watching what you advocated for when we had our joint session with Port Royal, and that was collaborating and sharing resources and communicating, seeing you here now, seeing you in your meetings. I do watch your meetings online now, trying to be familiar with what you guys are talking about. And some of the changes that you're making. One of them, and correct me if I get this wrong, but you guys, usually it's custom for you, the chair, to go into the high schools and give kind of a ceremonial, encouraging speech to those that are graduating. The change that you're making now is that the individual who's representing that district will go into that school and give that speech, and it'll just kind of give everybody the opportunity to be that positive influence in the district that they represent. I think I got that right, and I listening to it, I thought it was an awesome change. I commend you for that, and I thank you for being here with us tonight. But we got a chance to go into the schools, and Robert Small's, the Leadership Academy, was where I went in, and I guess there's been $63 million-ish in renovations in the last couple of years. I haven't been in there since then. I was blown away from just walking in and seeing the facility itself and the changes that were made from when I last remember it as a kid. And then we met with Mr. T, as he calls himself, and he kept referring to the kids as their babies. And I didn't realize how personal he was with these kids until we started getting a tour of the facility. But every child that we came in contact with, he had a personal encounter with. He knew if they played a specific sport, what position they played. He knew if they had anxiety of a test that they were taking on that day, and he was inquiring about how they felt. Just very, very personable, and you could see how passionate he was for it. He came in and wanted to kind of have a community school to where they're having, time together, whether it's movie night or they have a food pantry in there now to where some of the families who are less fortunate can come in once a week and get food. Hopefully there's the opportunity for us to connect the dots with maybe second helpings in them to where they can have a farmer's market. He talked a little bit about that being part of his vision. So the experience was just really, really good. I was very impressed with the school and thankful again to be selected to be in the Leadership Beaufort. March 25th, I will be in Columbia taking advanced municipal class on economic development. So I look forward to that. I'll be there the 25th and then return on the 26th. And then on March 19th and 20th, I mentioned this last month and I'm gonna mention it again because it hasn't come up, but they're still looking for volunteers. I will be volunteering with the Junior Achievement of Greater South Carolina. My understanding of the event, which I haven't done it yet, is it's gonna be a simulation that teaches financial education to middle schoolers and high schoolers, I think. But at any rate, I'm excited for it and hopefully will be a help to them on the 19th and the 20th. And that's all that I have. Thank everybody for being here tonight. I know it's a long night and not easy sitting there, so thank you.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank Scott Marshall for such a great retreat. It was run very well, I believe, and I think we all got something out of it, and much more to come. I'm not gonna go into all the things I've been to because a lot of it's been said, but a couple of things. I had the honor of going to Charleston, Councilman Mitchell for 12 Black Leaders You Should Know event. And several people were honored there, 12 of them, but a couple of them from Beaufort. Last week, I had the privilege of speaking to a Cub Scout troop over at Tidal Creek Fellowship on Ladies Island. They had invited me over and had a really great time with them. And then recently I went over to TCL. They had the ribbon cutting for the Foodseum part of their Culinary Institute. It's kind of a museum of food, Southern food. Very, very interesting. Anyway, a lot of other things, but I'm not going to go into it all. With that, I want to make a motion that we go into executive session. Get ready for all this. Pursuant to Title 30, Chapter 4, Section 70A1 of the South Carolina Code of Law, discussion regarding personnel, boards, commissions, and committees, Waterfront Advisory Committee, Parks and Tree Committee, Tourism Development Advisory Committee. Pursuant to Title 30, Section 4, Chapter 4, Section 70A2 of the South Carolina Code of Law, legal advice regarding litigation. 1, Protect Beaufort Foundation, Inc. versus the City of Beaufort. 2, Historic Beaufort Foundation versus City of Beaufort, City of Beaufort Historic Review Board, and the Beaufort Inn LLC. 3, West Street Farms LLC and Mix Farms LLC versus City of Beaufort, City of Beaufort Historic District Review Board, and the Beaufort Inn LLC. 4, Miranda Black individually and on behalf of all others similarly situated versus City of Beaufort, South Carolina, SP Plus Corporation, DBA Park Beaufort, Metropolis Technologies, Inc. Sorry about that. And C, pursuant to Title 30, Chapter 4, Section 70A of the South Carolina Code of Law, discussion regarding personnel appointed by council and city manager. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Got a second. Okay. Okay, all in favor of going to executive session?